Hello and welcome back to Particular Pixels. I'm Sheldon and this is my review of Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered for PC. Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered, another PlayStation exclusive, has finally arrived on PC. When the game originally launched, it got a lot of positive reactions, so I was quite excited to get my hands on it. I wanted to see whether its PC version would be polished or not. So here are my thoughts after fully completing the campaign and all of its DLCs. Discussing the story is somewhat of a challenge since there will be inevitable spoilers, so I won't tread there for those of you who are planning on playing the game. While the story is not the most original and is par for the course for a superhero themed game, it does do an excellent job of moving the narrative forward. The voice acting is very good and most of the characters are actually quite well realized and have depth. As a result, the quality of the story segments kept me invested throughout my entire playthrough. While it's not particularly thought-provoking or deep, it's entertaining while it lasts. The main campaign will likely last around 20 to 25 hours depending, and the 3 DLCs are pretty short, coming in at around 10 to 15 hours combined at a stretch. Nexus has done a pretty good job with the PC port for the most part. The PC version has plenty of graphical options to suit your specific setup, therefore you'll be able to tweak them to get the performance/visual quality you're happy with. Performance overall was fine for me, with the game on very high and some custom ray tracing settings nearly max. I should note though that I am running on an i7-2700K with an RTX 3080. When I tried to play the game on an older system with a Ryzen 5 3600X and an Nvidia 1660 Super, I did encounter some performance challenges, though I was able to get a very playable experience on medium settings. With medium, I was able to maintain 60-ish with some occasional dips depending on the situation in the game. Marvel Spider-Man Remastered looks good on max settings even without its ray tracing effects. The city is very impressive and the view distances and its sheer scale is definitely a sight to behold, especially for a 4-year-old game. The streets are full of cars and people, which add to what is already an immersive experience. While the interaction with the cars and the civilians is very limited, with the exception of specific crime events, it still creates a believable, bustling city. So regardless of whether it's night or day, with or without ray tracing, the city is visually very impressive. And I found myself taking pauses to take screenshots via photo mode quite frequently. Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered is at its core an open-world superhero game. While it's more focused than others, it still follows the same formula we've come to expect from open-world games these days. The map is divided into zones, with each zone having towers that need to be unlocked to see all the collectibles and the open-world activities in each area. Traversing the city feels great. I thoroughly enjoyed web-slinging through the urban jungle. However, you probably won't spend that much time on the ground. Well, I'm saying this because I didn't. Most of the time I was above street level swinging around between collectibles, activities and missions. The game has night and day settings, though it doesn't have a dynamic time of day cycle. So as such, the time of day changes based on the current mission. However, once you finish the game, you'll be able to switch between night and day from any of the research stations scattered throughout the city. Marvel Spider-Man Remastered also has a level progression system. Leveling up increases your base health, your damage and occasionally your web slinging speed and rewards you with a skill point. There are 3 skill trees, so you are free to unlock skills in whatever tree you choose as long as you have the prerequisite skill in that tree. While some of them are passive upgrades to existing abilities, many of them add new moves and abilities as well, which is nice. You will eventually unlock all of them, since you will accumulate plenty of points as you make your way through the campaign. Unlocking the various suits also unlocks a suit power associated with them, and each suit can be equipped with 3 passive abilities which can be unlocked with resources. Some of these are certainly more useful than others, but what you choose will depend on your playstyle. Some add more damage or give more XP rewards from combat, faster regeneration for your focus, less damage from melee attacks or bullets and such. All in all, they add a welcome variety in case you want to experiment with them. What's also great is that once you have unlocked a suit, you can mix and match, so you won't be locked into a specific suit if you want to use a specific power. This is great since it allows you to set up Spidey in a way that suits your playstyle or for specific encounters, while also wearing whatever suits you prefer. And there are quite a few to unlock in the game. The gadgets are unlocked as you progress through the story as well, up to a total of 8, and they can all be upgraded, adding more uses, more range and that kind of thing. The game also has several side activities available. These are collectibles, crimes, research stations, challenges, and faction bases that you get to fight your way through. The faction bases were by far my favorite, and my least favorite were probably the screwball challenges, since she was quite annoying. All of these activities reward specific resources and XP that allow you to upgrade your gadgets, as well as unlock new suits and passive suit abilities. Sometimes I find these collectathons quite tedious. Thankfully, the game is not filled with as many as in most Ubisoft titles, so I never really felt it became a grind to complete them. Not only that, but most of them can be done while traveling between story missions or side missions. It's not necessary to grind these out either, because you will have fully upgraded most of your gadgets and passive skills by the time you reach the end game, if you stick to the main story. The only time I did feel like it started to get a little repetitive was when I was trying to 100% each zone after I'd already completed the campaign, and the zone of each DLC, since each DLC when loaded has different side activities. The game also offers a new game plus option where all suits and powers are unlocked and you keep all your skills, as well as gain access to the ultimate difficulty mode. The game also has a pretty decent photo mode, if that's your thing. Aside from traversal, combat is the thing you'll be spending the majority of the game doing. The system takes after the flowing combat found in the Arkham Asylum series. You'll be fighting varied groups of enemies while dodging attacks, using gadgets, performing finishes, and building up a combo meter, which then allows you to use your suit's ability when it's full. Several encounters, mainly the base missions and some story missions, start off in stealth, so you can pick off a number of enemies before engaging fully. Sneaking around on rafters and jumping between lampposts while using your webs to neutralize enemies or string them up was nice, and reminded me a lot of the stealth sections in the Batman games. The enemies are fairly varied as well. You'll be fighting against different factions throughout the game, each having its own unique units mixed in with the base variations found in every faction. While I'm not going to go into all of them here, you have your ranged units which fire at you from a distance, the large brutes that you need to stun before attacking, shield-wielding enemies that need to be attacked from behind, and weapon-wielding enemies that need to be launched into the air. All pretty run-of-the-mill for the most part. Now, while the system is not new or particularly groundbreaking, I found it very enjoyable. Still, it was certainly on the easy side even on hard mode. The combat is fluid, the animations look great, and depending on who you're fighting, you'll need to adjust your tactics. So aside from melee attacks, you can also use your gadgets in fights, which vary things up and allow for some creativity in how you choose to deal with each encounter. However, with the mouse and keyboard, there was an issue with the aiming of gadgets while airborne, which I'll talk about a little later. For the most part though, it's fairly simple to use the gadgets. By pressing the middle mouse button, you bring up a radial menu where you can select the gadget you want to use, which slows time down while in the menu. By fighting your enemies, you can refill these gadgets. However, you don't get to choose what is refilled. From what I can tell, it happens randomly. There are several boss encounters, as you would expect throughout the various campaigns, most of which has some quick time events mixed in. These QTEs are not obnoxious or annoying, but they are there for those of you who want to know. Obviously, I'm not going to go into specifics about any of these encounters, since that's spoilerish, but most of them were pretty easy and somewhat predictable as far as mechanics go. Nevertheless though, they were enjoyable and I never felt any of them overstayed their welcome, dragged out, or became unfair. There are also plenty of puzzles to do, mostly in Otto's lab, though you can find a few inside missions or activities. The puzzles themselves are not difficult, but some may find that they interrupt the flow of the game. They come in two flavors. The first type requires you to connect the current between 2 points and then balance the voltage. The second type requires you to use strips to match the required layout. These puzzles do get more complex as you progress further into the game and reward a necessary resource, and they never really annoyed me for the most part. For those of you that are not interested in actually doing these, it's entirely possible to disable them by the options menu, which was a nice addition. I'll likely skip these in my New Game Plus playthrough. The last type of gameplay are the stealth sections with MJ and Miles Morales. There are several of these scattered throughout the campaign. They weren't challenging or engaging as far as stealth sections go. To be honest though, I found these stealth missions to be somewhat pointless, and the story info that was presented via these sections could have easily been conveyed through cutscenes. I don't think these stealth missions added anything meaningful to the gameplay experience, and while for me they did not detract really from the experience, some will find that they do. Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered is a decent port, as I said earlier, but I did come across several issues during my time with the game. A few graphics glitches, issues with ray trace reflections in metallic objects, and HBO Plus were not working at launch. These have thankfully been patched and seem to work for most people now, I think, but not all, if the Steam forums are anything to go by. However, there are two issues that are still present at the time of writing this review. Firstly, performance degradation. After playing for a while, the performance seems to get worse and worse until you restart the game, which fixes it. I believe this is only affecting some people. Secondly, and probably the worst of the two issues, is the inability to aim properly while airborne during combat. When using the mouse and keyboard, the crosshair actively moves away from where you're trying to aim once you're airborne. This makes it impossible to use gadgets on enemies after you jump, which is incredibly annoying and disruptive as well. As a result, I was forced to only use gadgets when I was on the ground, which limited my options in combat. This is particularly difficult for encounters on rooftops since you'll spend more time in the air. This really needs to be sorted out since it directly affects a large part of the gameplay and limits the freedom and options you have in every single encounter. In fact, I've chosen not to start my New Game Plus playthrough on Ultimate difficulty as a direct result of this. I have reported the issue and supplied Nexus with several forum posts of others having the same issue. Hopefully they sort this out soon, since I'd really like to play through the game again. All in all, Marvel Spider-Man Remastered is a great experience on PC and is a decent port. While it's not perfect, I'd still highly recommend playing it at some point, especially if you're a Spider-Man fan. It's not as open as some open world games go, since it is a more focused experience and can be completed to a 100% with all the DLC in less than 50 hours. Or around 30 hours if you mainly focus on the campaigns and DLC story missions with some side stuff. Regardless though, it's a high quality title and certainly worth your time. As with most games, depending on what type of gamer you are, your mileage will vary. I personally intend to replay the game on New Game Plus Ultimate difficulty when they fix the mouse aiming bug I mentioned earlier. Before closing, the biggest issue I have is that Sony is trying to charge €70 for a 4-year-old game, when the PC releases of games like God of War and Days Gone came in at around €50. Even though it includes all the DLC, I don't think it really justifies the price, and I think it's a little on the high side. Despite it being a great game, it's a much harder pill to swallow at €70 and possibly even more difficult depending on what region you are in. Should you pick the game up? Most certainly. Should you pick the game up at full price? Well, probably not. And to be honest, I don't think people choosing not to purchase the game at full price will change Sony's stance on their pricing, but I really don't think we need to encourage them, do we? Anyway, that's pretty much everything I have to say regarding Spider-Man Remastered on PC. I hope some of you found this review helpful. If you do have any questions or comments, you can leave them in the section below. I've been Shaoling, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.